Welcome back in, everyone. We are back at it, another episode of Modern Symposium. We are had a couple weeks off in between here. I've been a little bit busy. I'm sure Richie's been busy. So we just wanted to touch back in here, probably going over some things that we've just been seeing in the news headlines, things like that. First one that I'll start us off with today is Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Iran conflict is over. So we're good.
I bet I can guess what the news tomorrow will be.
We bombed Lebanon or something.
Yeah, the Iran conflict will be back. I feel like that's just, has this been me or has it just literally probably been 20 times now for the past 2 months that it's almost every day Trump or Netanyahu or even Iran sometimes is announcing that there has been a ceasefire and the war is over. And then like either later that day or the following day, the fire continues and nothing happens. And that's happened like over and over and over to the point that I think I'm not even exaggerating. I think it has been like at least 20.
Yeah, it has been so many of those. We were talking earlier about how we haven't seen a ton out of politics in the past couple of weeks here. And had said something along the lines of it does kind of feel like we're in like a little bit of like a holding period. People are just kind of waiting to see what's going to shake out in Iran. And then we're kind of going to go from there. And I had texted you, I think last night, apparently Trump and Netanyahu were on a phone call. Israel had done some sort of escalation in Lebanon. And then this is supposedly a Trump quote, but I've seen this a ton. I don't think this is like fake. My question being, how did these quotes come out? Like who is like leaking these quotes when like Trump's on a call with Netanyahu and then it's like, oh, I heard this, but like, where does this come from? But here's the quote. You're fucking crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this.
That's probably like one of the smarter things I've heard him say this week. Where was that at like a couple months ago before we did all this, you know?
I don't know. Yeah. It seems like he got pitched on the idea of like a short, we're in, we're out. We decapitate the leadership. And now we get to plant another victory flag like we did with Venezuela, and then, we won't have a ton of blowback, but now it seems like we're kind of entrenched for the long haul.
Yeah, well, that quote actually, so I hadn't heard that before. I do think that that is probably a good news headline. Let's be honest, it seemed to pretty much everyone like Trump and Netanyahu were both kind of in it together trying to screw over America. Whereas, like, this is kind of saying what Lou was saying on the last episode, which is that it's not like Trump is like some super genius who is doing all this 4D chess. What he actually is, he's just like an idiot who gets easily fooled by these people who flatter his ego and kind of, offer him, all the things that they know he wants. If that quote is legit and if it was said in a genuine way, then I think that does give us a little bit of evidence to which one he is. It shows that he's like the idiot who's just been who fell for this. In public, he's still got to pretend to be all about it, but then in the side, he's like, "Yeah, what the hell did you get me into, man?"
Yeah. I'd ask the question, like, where do these quotes come from? And now I'm kind of thinking they probably leaked this themselves. Like, Trump's actually sticking it to BB now. Like, he's not standing for this bullshit anymore. So that was probably a nice self tattletale.
Yeah, as I was saying that too, I was kind of thinking that too. It's like, oh yeah, it actually seems like it's good for Trump. I wonder if it's just what Trump wants us to know.
Yeah.
And again, we're back to maybe he is the 4D chess guy. It never ends.
Here's a couple interesting ones. I saw that Marco Rubio quote, kind of laughed a little bit. And then I went over to Kalshi, took a look at some odds on U.S. president. A couple interesting ones. Who do you think's in the lead right now?
For U.S. president 2028? Gavin Newsom, maybe?
Rubio at plus 398. He's pulled ahead of Vance a little bit. Vance is plus 44. And then there's Newsom at plus 528. Now, here's the actual interesting one. I hadn't looked at this bet ever before. The winning party in 2028, Democrat minus 161, Republican plus 139.
Yeah, see, I saw something like that before, and that doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like there's an opportunity to make a shit ton of money for free right now, because if we were to just bet on Newsom and then bet on Republicans, we might be able to win no matter what.
So that's what I was kind of thinking. And then I was like, well, that doesn't make a ton of sense. What could that mean? What that probably means is for the Republicans, it's going to be one of two guys. Like Vance is going to be the guy or it's going to be Rubio. Maybe they don't really know who it's going to be for Democrats because Newsom is the favorite right now to be the Democratic nomination, but there's a slew of people behind him. Anyone can come out of nowhere, right, and just win the nomination. So I think it's just reflecting more uncertainty on who the nominee will be for the Democrats than it is anything else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, the Democrats have a better chance of winning because they have more potential candidates, even though none of the single potential
Right.
candidates have a better, like supposedly a better chance than Rubio or Vance. Yeah,
Yeah, there's
funny
the
that.
two guys in the spotlight, and neither of them are looking too hot right now for the Republicans, just because they're getting bogged down by this Trump administration that a lot of people aren't very happy with at the moment. So then, but they are the two guys of who it will likely be versus it could be any bevy of Democrat to step up.
Yeah. So being out of the loop for like a couple weeks here, not totally, but just I haven't been following as close as I usually do. The entire Iran war, it has kind of not been like I haven't thought about it at all for like weeks. Are you still seeing a lot of stuff about it? Is it still running the headlines, or are they? It seems like they're almost trying to look for other things, but it's nothing can. I mean, they just had such a generational run there. They had Epstein, Venezuela, Iran, and now they're trying to do. Hey, did you see AOC's wearing the hijab? And it's like that's not going to get us. Like, it's got to be something crazier. Kind of seems like that a little bit, where it's just exhausted.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing headlines still like every couple days I'll see some bullshit like new strike force mounting in the Middle East and then like you don't really hear about it again. Again, I kind of feel like I said this at the beginning, it feels like we're in like a little bit of a holding pattern right now with it still seems like we are trying to negotiate. I don't think Iran wants to negotiate because I think they're sitting kind of pretty right now. They can just cut off the oil supply and wait it out basically because another thing that I actually have been seeing is, and we talked about this like a month ago. We might have talked about this 2 months ago, possibly. But these like oil shocks that we've been feeling, we've been able to kind of mitigate it. One, we've been selling off our strategic oil reserves, so we've been keeping prices down. We've been doing other things to try and lower the effect of it. But coming in the next like weeks to month or so here, I've been saying we could really start to feel these like oil shortages starting to hit home. Like I think the average oil prices is hovering somewhere around like 4.5 maybe, and like that could potentially like double is what I'm saying. I don't know if that's spreading fear and whatever that the internet does to keep you on their post for the extra 5 seconds so they get monetized or whatever, but.
No, I think there is some legitimacy to that. I mean, the fact that it's lasted this long without having a oil price spike crisis is kind of shocking to me. I mean, this is way longer than anyone projected, at least back when it started. It can't last forever, though. I don't think all the stuff we're doing. Oh yeah, we're selling our oil reserves, or we're just we're going to Venezuela getting oil from there, outsourcing. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much. All that's doing is creating a buffer. If the demand stays the same and supply drops significantly, well, then at some point you're going to see the prices spike. Like we could play all these like kind of games that they're trying to do, but at the end of the day, it's like it's doing is trying to camouflage the issue.
All the measures that we've been taking have felt like a stopgap where it's trying to plug the holes, keep it afloat for now. But then in coming weeks and months, if things don't go back to what they were before, I don't really see how we don't have super high oil prices and then cost of goods on like everything else goes up across the board.
Yeah, right. I mean, energy is the key to everything, basically. It's literally the platform for the rest of the economy. The stock market has been doing not bad. I mean, this week hasn't been great, but past couple of weeks it kind of rebounded. Very minimal damage compared to what people were expecting. Well, a big part of that is because the AI growth has outpaced expectations in the last couple of months. The new bottleneck that is going to become the bottleneck for AI is going to be energy. So at the same time that even though, we've been financially irresponsible for half a century at least, And we've done everything we possibly can to try to break the economy. We did break the economy in 2008. We did band-aids. We put all this stuff on it. We basically just tried to drag it out as long as possible, knowing that it's eventually not going to work. And at that point, then politicians and rich people will rug pull the rest of us, move to Israel or move to wherever and start from there. That's kind of, I think, been the plan. And then all of a sudden, AI has been, because of like some of the recent progression, there's like an actual legitimate claim to be made saying, wait a minute, this actually could increase productivity to a level that would be sustainable with the current situation, with the inflation and with the debt problem. This could be the solution to the problem, or at least like an actual, maybe not a permanent forever solution, but an actual like
Countermeasure.
a countermeasure that's not for this year, a countermeasure that might actually give us another couple decades to figure something out. This miracle happened, like that somehow this isn't a civilization-ending crisis that we're facing all of a sudden. Now there's a possible way out. Well, now what we're going to do, we're going to bottleneck the energy and cause an energy crisis, which is like one of the only things that would actually stop this. The protests aren't going to stop it. When they don't have any energy, that's going to stop it.
What type of energy do like these data centers run on?
I believe it's about 3 gigawatts of energy capacity is required for a hyperscale data center. If you're connected to the grid, I mean, you're going to be basically cutting the energy supply in half in your local area. And so then the idea becomes, okay, well, you have to provide your own energy. So if you have to provide your own energy, which I think you should, if you're going to run that big of a facility, now you really don't have too many options. The most obvious one is nuclear. Small nuclear reactors is a no-brainer here, except for the regulations are too restricting still. I mean, if we wanted to solve this problem, we could do it with a swipe of the pen just by allowing all of these small nuclear reactor companies to trade in the free market and actually start providing some energy with the product that they already have that's already good, better than any other energy supplier. But we're just still scared about like Chernobyl. If it comes down to it and we have an energy crisis, I think that would be like the most obvious solution. I just don't think it'll happen.
How many like politicians can give like a succinct summary of like nuclear energy, like pros and cons, things like that? Obviously they'd all get debriefed on it, but all that would really matter is what their goddamn like donors tell them to vote on or not.
I mean, I'm sure there's some that they know what they're doing, and those ones probably have been, bought and sold by so many corporations that they don't give a shit anymore. So one thing kind of interesting, the AI data centers, right now they have a bottleneck in chips. And chips is just a matter of fabricating more chips and keeping up with the increased technology and making the transistors smaller and doing all that. And it's, it's Moore's law, basically. So it's going to keep scaling, and it's just at this point, the demand for chips is basically infinite. Everyone wants chips. Everyone's loading up on chips. They literally can't make them fast enough, which is a good thing for the economy. That's a good sign that it's probably not a bubble just yet when it comes to the chips. All the chip companies are up, 100% in the last couple months, which is insane. And I'm kind of kicking myself because I've been talking about this for a year and I didn't buy any chip companies. But anyway, maybe they don't keep going up at that rate, but I don't think they're going to crash because I think they're actually worth that much at this point because our ability to fabricate chips is not there. But we know Moore's law. We know that it's going to be there because it scales basically parabolically or exponentially. What doesn't is energy. So especially when we're talking fossil fuel energy, so oil, gas, all that, it's linear scaling. There's no increased amount that we can get. You just got to drill it and sell it. If we find more, there's more. If not, there's that. But with when it comes to nuclear is already has way more capacity than any other source that we use, and it would actually give us so much energy that we would not have any energy problems. Everything would be cheap again. But there's the obvious risks and there's the obvious fear, and so that one never can surface. And so what's left is you've got the renewable energy sources, and none of them have so far been effective enough to basically disrupt fossil fuels. You can maybe do a solar panel on your roof, but you're not going to be able to power the grid with them. You can't store the energy. The batteries aren't powerful enough. We're still not there. Specifically with solar on the batteries. So we know SpaceX is going public, and we had that on the agenda today. We can talk about that in a little bit. Part of the big thing that Elon keeps talking about is putting solar panels in space. And he had this whole terafab announcement that he made. And what he's talking about is he's trying to put, rather than put like communication satellites, he's trying to put solar panels and even possibly like mini data centers in space so that the solar panels can power the centers. The problem with solar panels is the batteries, right? And it's not always sunny on Earth, but it is always sunny in space. So the battery problem, rather than trying to make better batteries, Elon's saying, no, we'll just sidestep that. We'll put them in space, then we don't need batteries because we have the biggest battery of all time, the sun. And so that's part of the plan there, and that's going to be part of the plan to power the data centers. Now, looking at the math, nuclear is still better. Nuclear is still way better, but if we assume that one is not going to get through, solar panels scale based on square footage, which is kind of another advantage, whereas like it's not that we don't have enough land, we do, but obviously land is a finite resource and, you know, people aren't as willing to give it up to solar panels as you would hope. But in space, there's a lot of space. It's not actually ridiculous the amount of square footage that you would need for like a max capacity data center, even in the future, because the energy demand is only going to keep going up. So I even projected it 10, 20 years out. I was using ChatGPT. And what it ends up being is that like there's a certain point where if you get enough in space, like you could basically power the entire grid with solar energy, but only if it's in space.
Obviously, the science of like satellites and shit is absolutely insane. How does the energy go from the shit in space back down to us?
So great question, because that's the next bottleneck, which is why, I mean, Elon's solution is like, oh, you just put the data center in space.
Oh, that's where data center in space comes from. Yeah.
We're taking the sun, we're turning it into information, and then we're sending the information to Earth. And the information can be used to produce things, basically.
Mm-hmm. But and that's if we have the data centers in space. Otherwise, it's like tough to broadcast the energy like back down to us or something.
That's a great question, actually. I can't think of any way that we could, not with any good efficiency, that we could like take it from the satellite and somehow get it.
That's when you just have massive structures in space, solar panels attached to like mini data centers up there.
Let's see here. The hard part is getting the energy down.
Mm-hmm.
Great point there. I did not think of that when I was giving my whole rant there. So they can do microwave beaming. Satellite converts electricity into microwaves and beams. That makes sense. I guess there is some ways, but I'm curious what the efficiency of these ways is because if it's not good, then there's no point in doing this at all. Yeah, not good. The microwaves is 5 to 20%, and then the lasers was the other ones, and that's less than 10%, which is okay. Yeah, that would be not good at all.
How much would these projects cost?
When we talk about the AI industry, there's about, I think, 6 or 7 layers. You've got a chip market, you've got a hyperscaler market, you've got the model market, you've got the application market, and these are all just kind of layers built on top of each other. The first layer is the chips, though. The chip market, what do you think is the market cap, not of the entire thing, just of the top 15 companies that are publicly traded combined? What do you think they're worth? 15 companies, So
that's NVIDIA and the other 14.
NVIDIA and the other 14.
Market caps combined 10 trillion.
That's pretty close. So it's 16 trillion, 16 and a half trillion if you take the top 15. Now, even crazier though, what do you think it was a year ago?
2?
Like 6. So yeah, I mean the growth has been absolutely insane in just strictly in the chip market. Now, I'm wondering if that capital does end up going to the energy market, knowing that that's going to be the next bottleneck, or at least, projecting that it's going to be like this is the current phase. But if we look like 3 years into the future, if energy is now becoming the bottleneck, well, now there's going to be $16 trillion going to solar panels in space or nuclear or something. Hopefully, I think that would be a good thing. But
you were looking at like energy things where you're talking about solar, and you had said like the storage of energy, of like the solar energy, is even seemingly a bigger bottleneck than just like putting a bunch of solar panels out there, right?
But yeah, the solar panels honestly are other than nuclear, there is no fossil fuel that has a better like power per dollar than solar would at scale. But the problem is that it's the storage, and so it's the peak capacity would not be able to be maintained. So basically, we don't have control over when we get to use it. And so you've got these lithium batteries, and these things are developing slowly. They've developed enough to the point where you can use them to like drive a car for many miles and not worry about running out of electricity. The problem with the batteries is that they cannot store enough energy to meet like a massive demand. And the technology is growing, and maybe it'll get there, but it's not growing that quickly. If the sun was always shining, solar would be the only form of energy you need. The only problem is that it's not always shining, and when it's not, you can't risk having your entire infrastructure go out because you had 2 cloudy days in a row.
Mm-hmm. Have you, slight tangent here, have you seen the like superchargers for the BYD cars that came out recently?
I think I've seen like some like short videos about it, but I haven't looked into it too much.
There's something like 5 or 6 minutes maybe for like a 0% charge to like a 80 or 90% charge or something on the cars, which is like about the amount of time it takes to like fill up your gas tank. It's maybe like a minute or two longer, but still incredibly impressive.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I do want to take a look at that now because not investing advice, but I am heavily invested in Tesla, and so BYD has been scaring me. That's why I've been pushing a lot of anti-China propaganda on this podcast, trying to help my own book.
Trying to move the needle.
Yeah, I'm trying to move the needle. I do got to look into that because I've always kind of thought that. I mean, even when I first invested in Tesla, it was like 3 or 4 years ago now. It was the first stock I ever invested in. But when I first started, I tried to be very smart and cautious and patient, and like I don't have much money. I don't want to throw it all on some bullshit. And one of the things that I wrote down as like a risk was the fact that I wouldn't want to have to wait 20, 30 minutes every time I have to fill up. And another thing is that the batteries themselves, see, they kind of trick you a little bit, which is they say, oh yeah, you save so much money on gas, but you actually really don't with the current Teslas, or at least the recent ones, because you pay less when you're filling up because the electricity is less than the gas, but the battery has to be replaced so often, and the battery is like thousands of dollars. And so that ends up like you're going to pay way more for replacing the battery than you would have throughout that time period in gas.
I actually hadn't heard about that battery needing replacing.
That's at least like where it has been. I might be a little bit behind. Maybe I mean, they're moving so quick. They might be figuring something out with that now, but that was a problem at least for a while.
Yeah, that is interesting. Never heard that I think I replaced my car's battery. I've had my car like 10 years. I've probably replaced that battery like once or twice, and it's like a couple $100 as opposed to if you have to replace that thing like yearly or something in a Tesla, and it's like 1,000 or something.
I think it was like every like few years. It was like 3 to 5 years. So if you're paying, and I think it's like a couple $1,000s at least.
Like 480. You're easily probably putting in a grand, and depending on how much you drive, obviously some people have like an hour commute, and I'm sure they're easily hitting 1,000.
Yeah, I haven't paid for gas in years. I'm walking.
Hey, we were discussing the benefits of walking before this, and we should talk about like urban infrastructure on here one day, like walkable cities and shit like that. Because I always see stuff, people like come back from Europe. It's like, why did I feel so good and lose like 5 pounds when I was in Europe when I just drank beer and ate pasta all day? It's like, well, one, their food isn't poison, and two, you probably walked like 4 miles every day when you were there because you actually lived in a walkable community. And then the other thing is, it's like Disney World. Disney World is just selling you the idea of being able to live in a walkable community, basically.
Yeah, no, that's so true about Europe. I know a couple people. I'm thinking of like one like that fits that description exactly, and then I know a few others who have said the same thing. But this one guy I know, he went to Europe for like a little while. He came back. He was like I think he lost like 20 pounds. He was gone for like a month or two. And I was like, oh, dude, what, have you been hitting the gym? And he goes, no, I haven't been doing anything different. And I'm like, what? Like, are you sick or something? He's like, no, it's just, I'm like, have you been eating less? No, I've been eating like more. Like, I've been walking a lot, but that's why I think that the food actually in Europe plays like a major role. You could walk a lot, but if you're still eating the American food, I don't know how much it does compared to like if you're doing both, walking a lot, getting basically being like what we evolved to be. You move around a lot and then you eat natural food. Yeah. And if you just do that, then it improves your quality of life so much better, I feel like.
Dude, the ultra processed foods might be one of the biggest issues that we're facing, because that stuff is legitimately poison. Most of our bread like is not considered bread in like Europe. It's considered like cake.
your health is literally the foundation of everything. If you're physically unhealthy, then you're not going to do good in school. You're not going to do good at work, and you're not going to make money. Then you're going to be not able to afford good. And it's just like the downward spiral of everything else in your life. The quality is going to go down if you're not physically healthy. And they make it pretty difficult to be physically healthy where, you know, you have to go so far out of your way to even find something that might not be ultra processed, but it also might be because they don't have to tell you.
One, back to the bread. Like when I go to the grocery store, a lot of times they'll have like a deal. It's like buy one loaf, get one loaf free. It's like, all right, well, I was already going to buy a loaf, so I'll just pick up the second loaf for free. What's fucking insane is like that second loaf sits around for like a week, 2 weeks until I crack into it, and it still hasn't molded. When you buy real bread gets moldy in like a week. The shit you buy from the grocery store does not mold until like a month or something. Shows you that they are chock full of preservatives and other shit like that. And then even when you try and eat healthy, like when you try and buy like apples and vegetables, fruits and stuff like that, those things have been caked in
they're
fucking
also got it,
herbicides, pesticides, everything aside, side meaning killer because it kills organic things. It's been from stem to root to life to fruit. It's been chalked in these chemicals. And then what, you like run it over the sink, the water in your sink for
but
30
the water,
seconds. Like,
the water is filled with lead, by the way. The water is filled with chemicals too.
Yeah. So it's tough.
So one thing that I definitely think is for sure is that, like, yes, all of this is definitely happening. If you're eating, you know, pesticides and all these carcinogenic chemicals that are, you know, in almost all of the food that almost everyone gets, that it doesn't have good effects. But what I've never actually, like, I don't actually know is like, what are the symptoms or like you know,
I'd imagine it's like
of
the higher
you know,
obesity rates, cancer rates, chronic illnesses, all that shit that RFK is always illing about.
the cancer one's an interesting one because, like, my mom's been saying that for like 20 years. And I remember she was saying it way before it was cool. She was saying it before RFK. She was saying, oh, you got to watch out for the red dye and the seed oils. But at the same time, I was like a young kid and I was like, look, I'm not going to be the weirdo who's at the lunch table telling
Not
people
eating my fruit roll up.
Yeah. Like I don't really care that much about it at the time. But now as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to like think, all right, maybe that's something worth looking into. The cancers and the obesity and all these things. And I don't have any of that yet. But what I do notice is that I do feel very feel lethargic. I can't focus. Things that like I used to be able to do, you know, sit down and read a book. I like catch myself now. I'm distracted. I'm on my phone. I can't like sit still. All these types of things, or I'm very easily stressed. I'm wondering if that has a lot to do with it. That one's a tough one because there's been so many big changes that all could, you know, it's like, could it be social media? Could it be the food? And it's probably a combination of all of them. But I'm curious if if you've seen anything about that, if it's like messing with people's brains and like kind of making them a little bit like less able to do a good job.
I mean, the answer is in part, like, absolutely, right? Your food is your fuel. So if you're putting in, you know, like, say you're a car and you need like the premium oil to run, but now you're putting in the cheap E85 stuff, it's like, all right, you're probably still going to work, but like you'll be a little clunkier, a little slower. You're not going to run as smoothly. And I think that is, you know, definitely like an aspect of it. One kind of interesting thing to think about, you know, people like talk about like GMOs, right? Genetically modified organisms. It's pretty interesting when you look back, like if you can look at like a painting, say from like the 1700s, and they'll be like, and they'll have like fruit bowls in these paintings, right? People paint fruit a lot, right? But you can look at like a watermelon and the seeds on the watermelon are like this big and the pink part of the watermelon is like tiny, right? So that was over, even after like 200 years, specifically breeding for, all right, we want more pink juicy parts and less large seeds. We have changed it in that way. Like bananas used to be like absolutely terrible, super starchy, husky, you could barely eat them, like massive seeds. Now we've changed them into this beautiful, like huge fruit that you get so much fruit out of. GMO foods like that. We've kind of been like genetically modifying these organisms for hundreds, thousands of years. Now the only question is these, like the steps we've been taking in the last like couple decades, probably. Are we doing too much? Are we like changing the like organic materials that are inside of it.
See, that's an interesting one. I never heard that before about the seeds. You're genetically modifying them to get rid of the seeds, right? Or shrink them, or like kind of
Shrink the seeds, grow the fruit.
yeah, yeah, and the seeds are the way that these things reproduce. And meanwhile, in somewhat parallel to that process, we have been doing the same thing. Whereas we've got all these new ways that we can make you more focused on your work and more and you're going to be a bigger, better person. Except the birth rate is plummeted. You
Yeah,
know,
and
it's
and
like we
that's
started with the
strange.
fruit. It might be leaking over to us.
That's a strange parallel. Interesting one on fertility rates. Have you seen the thing that apparently, like, if fertility rates hold, North Korea will out survive South Korea? South Korea, which was set up to be like a perfect model of Western capitalism, they have like some of the worst, lowest birth rates in the entire world. North Korea, in their poverty and communist stricken country, is actually still doing better in terms of fertility rates somehow.
The thing about fertility rates is that it's so difficult to actually find a cause and effect that is objective. And so there's always going to be a bunch of different reasons. I think it was a while ago, so I might be botching it, but I think it is generally the case that communist countries tend to have higher, over the long term, have higher birth rate sustainability than capitalist countries do. I might want to fact check that one live because
I
I'm
never
not sure
heard
if
of
that's
that.
right.
I heard this quote has stuck with me, but the guy said, "Do you know how hard it is to convince a mammal not to reproduce?"
Yeah, right.
It is
And like so many people have been convinced
it is
easily by the propaganda.
incredibly difficult to do that. So when you say like it's hard to pin down like what the factors are, there's got to be so many factors playing into it. Societal factors, like economic factors, right? If we had like the booming economy that we did of the 80s, even with changing societal norms, changing like gender roles, things like that, I think our birth rates would still be better, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I hear that one a lot too about like, oh, well, it's the women coming into the workplace and it's the kind of, gender equality. I'm not so sure I buy that because I don't think that the only reason that we ever reproduced was because we oppressed women. And as soon as we allowed them to like do the same things we do, now all of a sudden we just can't reproduce at a sustainable rate. That doesn't make sense. I do think abortions or like what do you call it?
Contraceptives?
Yeah, contraceptives, birth control. I think those probably play a big role, but those also play a big role in kind of, the whole feminist movement. So I guess they are kind of intrinsically tied together. But I still, even those, I don't think that's it either. Because like you said, just because there's a technology that makes it possible so that you don't have to accidentally have children, I don't think that necessarily should at least be like the main reason why a large society of mammals continues to choose to have less and less children just because the option's there. That doesn't add. I mean, maybe partially, but there's more than that, I think. I think it's definitely like a cultural thing, and I think it's definitely a propaganda thing a little bit, too. I think there's a powerful force that does want birth rates to continue to go down
Do you think that's because of like an overpopulation thing?
I think there's a couple different things. So for one, there is definitely a fairly powerful group of people who want to bring in a global government. They've been trying to do this since like the 90s. These were like the original kind of neocons, like the George Bush and like even Bill Clinton. They've got all these kind of like government organizations, the World Bank and the IMF, and they meet at Davos and they talk about the Great Reset and all these things. They want to have a global government. If there's one government for the whole world, there'll never be any wars anymore because there won't be anyone to fight with because we won. And we basically we run the whole world. And that's kind of what like the American like globalization project is about. I think you've got a lot of forces pushing back and saying maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe, it's hard for a bunch of different cultures to be thrown into a melting pot and all get along, as we can see now, although we have gotten along for quite a while. But if the birth rate goes down in the United States, then the idea of American nationalism no longer exists because Americans don't make up America. Americans make up 35% or 40% of America, but not enough to actually do anything. When you bring in a bunch of immigrants from other countries, then you've got a hodgepodge kind of, 30% Americans and, 20% maybe technically U.S. citizens, but they still, send all their money back to Mexico or to a Middle Eastern country, wherever their family is, and they still actually kind of align more with their values. And so now you've got a bunch of different kind of pockets of people. And what makes sense when you've got a bunch of different pockets of people? Well, why would we want a national government? We might as well have a global government. I don't think that's the only one. I think that's probably one of like the most prominent ones, though. And that explains also why this is happening all over the globe, where like it's not only the United States that's had recently immigration problems and still does. This is happening in like every Western European and Western country where there's like an influx of immigrants all of a sudden. And to say that that's not coordinated, part of it is coordinated. We need immigrants to come in because we can't keep up with the job market by ourselves because the birth rate's plummeting. You know what I mean? So there's a connection there. I don't know how, seems a little bit conspiracy theory,
So,
but I mean,
so the West is trying to destroy the West so that they can rule everything.
well, kind of, yes. I think what they understand is that there is a competitor and it's kind of kill or be killed.
And how
And
does
so
bringing in immigrants make China any more likely to bow down to our global government that we would want to install?
not that it would make them more likely to bow down, it would make us less likely to bow down because for example, would be so like Trump is a good counterexample to this. I think like Trump was the comeback against this kind of globalization push. And what ends up happening with Trump is like, okay, now you've got like tariffs on everyone, and he's kind of separating from NATO and he's separating from our European allies, and he's kind of got a hostile relationship with Zelensky, who we're supposed to be supporting in the war. Now, rather than having a united Western alliance, well, now you've got all of these nation states. You got this nationalism, but the people who are kind of like the Nick Fuentes guys, the America First guys, who want it to be an American country, they're nationalists. This should be American values. That's what they think. The point is that it doesn't even matter if you bring in enough immigrants because now that is a small minority, and so there's no political power there. Now your politicians no longer are accountable to the people. The president of the United States is not loyal to the democracy. He is loyal to the globalist organization, and now you have more power on that level. I mean, I can't understand why else you'd have a bunch of like basically like global capitalist elites literally funding campaigns to encourage, Central American and South American people to come to the United States, and funding politicians and telling them to allow these people to come into the United States. And that's happening all over the world. I think it's related to the birth rate falling, and they're saying we have to replace the birth rate. Rather than try to get it back up, we have to just bring in other people, so that way now there's no countries really anymore. We now just have one global kind of like everyone's, in the same boat.
Some of that, I can follow. I mean, I followed it. I don't know.
It might be a little bit conspiratorial, I get.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to die on that hill that that's exactly what's happening, but it does seem like there's some incentive structures that align.
It would just be the elites benefiting, as always, bringing in cheap labor or something.
I could see both sides of that because there's totally a reasonable explanation for why the American working man would be getting a little frustrated after a while when like he spent like his whole career like building up, getting bigger salaries, and then it's like, oh yeah, now I can't find a job because either the factory jobs got outsourced to China or like the labor jobs are now being done under the table by immigrants. That part I do get. I get the frustration with that. But at the same time, I also understand the fact that it's like, but we do need to produce stuff. If Americans are all just these Cinderella type figures who can't get to work and, grind and do it, we have to do it somehow, So like, there's also a good argument for like, hey, whoever's the best at the job should get the job. And if it's not Americans, if we've got to outsource it because Americans can't do it for an efficient, affordable rate, well then, like, I could see that as well because, I mean, we have to do it. If we don't do it, we're just not going to exist.
You get left behind.
Yeah, I mean, just even like as a country or even just as any type of, whether it's like your city, your state, your country, like that's kind of what happened with like Detroit, and that's why Detroit went from the biggest booming city in the United States to now it's kind of a meme of like everyone kind of thinks of it as a shithole. That could happen to our entire country if we're just not doing anything. If people are coming over and they're like getting the work done and still too, but.
I saw a pretty funny tweet the other day. Are you familiar with the parking meters in Chicago?
The Saudis?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's,
it was Richard Daley sold what was it like? I don't know exactly. I can't remember.
bro,
It's
it's
been a
like
while.
2 bill or something.
Yeah, but then they get like 70 years worth of parking meter revenue from the city of Chicago. So we
Yeah.
like they ended up making that money back in like a couple years, and now they've just been raking in profit ever
Yeah,
since.
no, they're raking in the dollars off of us. It was like you said, it was profitable like a couple of years in. Now they're just making like billions a year, I think. But I saw a tweet. It was like, yeah, every time I park downtown in the city of Chicago, I only park in illegal spots so that I pay $50 to the great city of Chicago for parking, as opposed to paying $3 to the Saudis.
Yeah, that's good. No, I mean that was a total bonehead move, though. It seems like
Dude, that move is like the same. I think that's the move American politics has been making for the past like couple decades, where it's just like, oh, we're in a bit of a tricky situation. What should we do? It's like, oh, let's just print $50 billion and that'll get us out of it for now. Kick the can down the road, and then you just keep kicking it down the road. It's like, oh shit, the Saudis have been making $6 billion a year off of us every year for the last 20 years.
it is totally kicking it down the road, or it's just yeah, like short sightedness.
That's when Lou would hop in right now and say that's the problem with democracy is you have the temporary guardians in place who are only responsible for the right here and now, and they can't possibly have a long view on things.
He sold me a little bit on that, but I just don't think that the other options are any better. But like
Like
that
like
is
like
true. That is a flaw.
like yeah, like monarchy's better. Like
I don't think monarchy is better though. Like
I don't know about all that.
I shouldn't say monarchy is 100% bad because there could be a good monarchy if you happen to have a
Right.
good leader. Then it all just depends on who the individual person in charge is. Whereas, like, the democratic system is a pretty good idea, I think. If you get one of those people in charge who is just a nut and who's just a maybe a narcissist or whatever, and who is willing to just destroy everything to benefit them as an individual, well, then that guy only gets like a couple years in and you can vote him out.
I watched like maybe like a 10-minute video the other day. This guy was talking about reform versus revolution, right? So like reform, you keep your government and like power structure, things like that intact, and you try and win concessions back for like the working class essentially, right? And that versus revolution, we know what revolution is. It's completely overhauling everything, installing a new government, a new system, new power structure, things like that. And he was basically talking about like, yeah, my entire life I kind of just thought we needed like to reform things, like, oh, we got to get money out of politics, we need to do like this. And we've talked about how we really don't feel like we live in a democracy anymore because our individual votes don't really seem to change the outcome of anything. Even voting red versus blue does not really change the trajectory of what our political system is going to do. So do you think we can reform our way out of this or no? Or do you think like to get meaningful change, we would need a revolution?
That's a great question. I do think 100% we can reform our way out over the long term. Now, do we face a crisis that doesn't give us that amount of time to work with? And if that's the case, then there does need to be some form of revolution. Now, a form of revolution, when we think revolution, we think American Revolution, French Revolution, we think violent overthrowings of government. Well, that's not going to happen. Everyone kind of throws this out there, and it is probably true. Oh, it's the divide and conquer. We can't fight back against the powerful because we're too busy fighting with each other. That is probably very true. But even if we stopped fighting with each other and we tried to fight back against the powerful, we would get annihilated because the imbalance in power has gotten to a degree where we don't really stand a chance when it comes to violence. There are forms of revolution that are nonviolent, especially now, and I think we're missing some of these. I think a lot of people are not even really realizing how much the world has shifted because of social media, because of the digital age, where we always talk about how it's such a bad thing. But it's kind of, all these terrible consequences. Well, all it is a shift in the landscape, and there's actually better consequences too. One of them being is that you can form a revolution without like a grassroots violent overthrow. I mean, this has happened in the social media age multiple times where there's been, I think you brought one up one time that there was like
Nepal or something, I think.
yeah, and so this does happen. if we were to go for a revolution, for one, it should not be a violent revolution. It should be a smart revolution. It should be an information revolution, because information is literally the bottleneck when it comes to trying to form the revolution to begin with. You know, the idea of social media was supposed to be, there was a moment when governments were shaking, thinking, holy shit, this is going to be a problem, because now there is a way for all of the common people to organize over distance, over throughout the world, and to organize into revolutionary groups. I think they did a great job of solving that problem, because now it's very difficult to do that. I mean, people do that, but it's very difficult to build a large enough following with a revolutionary mindset. You know, it's easy to build a large enough following if you're Ben Shapiro, because if I'm Ben Shapiro, I could just say all the things that the algorithm likes, and I can throw in a few little things that might be good clickbait, and I can do all that. But if I actually want to like have a intellectual discussion about revolutionary possibilities, it's very difficult to organize a large following behind that. That's the problem that we should be solving, really, I think, is like, as a society.
Do you think the algorithm suppresses that purposefully?
I think it's actually United States policy that it must.
Probably, right?
I can't remember exactly what the policy was, but this came up in 2013 with the Arab Springs. During the Arab Springs, when there was all of these massive uprisings in the Middle East, all of these groups were organizing through Facebook. Zuckerberg was, you know, thrown in front of the trial, and I can't remember exactly what the law was, so I don't want to say for sure that they're like barred from doing that. But yeah, I mean, they're without a doubt influenced to do that.
Like, if any real substantive group starts forming on X and starts saying, like, all right, like, say that it has a page, 100,000 followers in like a couple week period, like, oh, we are marching on DC, basically like demanding X, Y, and Z. I think Elon shuts that shit down.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, actually, because I think he would. He bought it because the previous owners did exactly that. And he said, oh, I don't like that. I'm going to buy it so that won't happen again. Now, I'm not going to disagree with you, though. I do think he would, because it's in his incentive to do so.
Yes.
So much of his money comes from government contracts. He can't have a revolutionary group trying to overthrow his number one customer. If that were to happen, yeah, I would bet that Elon would shut it down. And same with all of them. And they kind of have no choice, really.
And if you started a new social media along those lines, I bet you would get shut down by the government.
Well, you wouldn't be allowed on the App Store.
Right. You're just held out of the.
You're describing something that's already happened. This is the January 6th story. Everyone who was there on January 6th gets banned from social media, from all social medias, Facebook, all at the same time. Think about how, all right, I want to bring this up, not as like a political hot topic, like genuinely how crazy this is. That was one of the times that I think radicalized so many people towards the right. Now people are being radicalized back to the left because they're like, it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But basically, think about this. Everyone who shows up to an event where a handful of people, you know, did commit crimes and trespassed on the Capitol building, there was multiple like big name people, including the president himself, who were banned at the same time from 27 internet platform companies. And then they say, okay, well, we're going to make our own app. And then the app gets banned from the App Store. And we want to say, I mean, I think this actually goes to like a lot of your points, much more than mine. It actually kind of tears apart a lot of my points about, you know, the capitalism thing, because we are well beyond the free market. It's not a coincidence that 27 independent companies all did the same thing at the same time. And then when the people that they did that to tried to like create a competitor to them to meet their needs, well, then they just went down one layer. Now the App Store won't let you on there. The Google Play Store would ban you from there. So now it's like, okay, so now what, are you going to make a new App Store? You know, it's like, okay.
I was thinking the other day, a huge disruption to like the whole technological information era, because like Apple has a fucking chokehold on the like American market for smartphones, right? You go abroad and like almost no one has an iPhone. Some people have iPhones, right? They do, but there's like a ton of other competitors, things like that. A huge disruption could be building a better mousetrap, building a better smartphone, because realistically, Apple has not goddamn innovated since the iPhone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true.
Like they came out with the iPhone, that shit smacks, and you know, they pump a new one out year over year, and gets a little bit better over time, a little bit better processor, a little bit better camera, better pixelation, shit like that. But the core idea has stayed the same for what, like 20 years or something now.
Yeah,
And
I
if
mean
you
they make good gadgets like the AirPods pretty good. They got
okay,
shit
all
like
right,
that, but
AirPods are cool, but like
that's not like big money. You know, that's a side little thing. You know, that's a little accessory. So the way they make most of their money
if you
now.
come in and you design a better phone right now, that's a huge. I mean, obviously, like anyone can say that, like, yeah, no duh. If you create a better iPhone, it's going to be a big fucking thing. But realistically, no one has really innovated in that space since the iPhone in America.
So do you know how Apple makes most of their money now?
Like
It's not
the,
from selling phones.
I was like the App Store or something, right?
It's
Like,
the App Store.
yeah.
Yes, Apple's number one product.
Is like their environment, their ecosystem, right? We kind of talked about this a little
Okay, yeah,
bit.
okay, yeah. Okay, so we have so the reason no one's made a better phone is likely because they can't because the features of Apple, the features of the iPhone was not made by one company. That would be impossible. There's no way one company can just make something that has everything in it. They made something that allowed everyone else to put their shit in it and make a profit. And so now the iPhone has become is like a decentralized, you know, hundreds of thousands maybe of different companies or people or apps or
Can't
whatever.
another phone have all of that on it too?
Yes, but they would have to remake it.
Instagram, like me and you create a new phone. We create our own app store. We can't put Instagram on that app store.
Well, you can, but Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg would have to remake Instagram to be compatible with that app store. Which he
I
did.
mean
I mean,
that's
he
not
did do that for
that's not
he
the
did that for
craziest thing.
Google.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
not the
mean,
craziest thing though. If you do create something better and kids start buying your new shit, Zuck wouldn't be like, nah, fuck you guys. I'm not letting you download it. Zuck would make it compatible.
he definitely would because he can drop a billion on it and not give a shit. It's like how does any like startup app company ever do that? They wouldn't. They would stick with Apple. It's the chicken and the egg problem. It's like, okay, we got to make it better first, and then we'll be able to attract the people. But the people are what made it good. I'm not saying it can't be done. Like I'm sure it can, but it's just that's the tough problem is how do you make it better than the App Store without any of the people or
You're
any of
right.
the ecosystem that made the App Store?
Well,
You got to somehow have some other like feature that attracts the people first, and then
yeah,
you can maybe
no,
do it.
like I was thinking like a totally new fucking like interface and everything, like as opposed to this like black screen, some kind of like clear crystalline thing, like some like futuristic looking ass thing. Like I was really thinking like why isn't someone like tried to change it? But it's probably like barriers to entry. Once again, we don't really have a free and fair marketplace for you to actually be able to come in and do it.
When we were talking with Lou, he was saying how he doesn't think that monopolies are possible without government, and I would agree with him when it comes to like I don't think it's possible for you to become a monopolist of like toilet paper without like some type of government subsidies or like guns even like but there are certain technologies that when they're network based that they do form natural monopolies and like that's a perfect example. It's like there's no government intervention needed there. It's just the fact that they basically kind of created their own government. The government says, "Hey, we're going to protect your right to live and you guys can try to make money however you want to." But here's the things we're interested in and we're willing to spend money on, kind of suggesting maybe if you really want to make money, do that. And then you just let the game play out. Well, then Apple kind of did the same thing where they just said, hey, you guys can use our platform here and you can make all your apps and you can do whatever you want. And we're not going to charge you except for when you make a good app that makes a lot of money. And then we're going to start increasing the amount that we take from you every month. And I mean, that's basically rent seeking. They wait for you to establish your own business and get successful, and then they step in. Now they're acting like a government. Basically, they're stepping in and saying, "Hey, either you're going to cough up 30% of your profits, or you're not allowed to do business on our platform anymore." That's the thing that sucks about the like a lot of internet companies, honestly, and just any like networking company. It seems like has the ability to do that.
If you do want to like change, like how could that go about? And it would have to be something drastic like that, where because the information systems are just totally controlled. I don't know.
I mean, there's got to be, all right, but there's always, there's always a way. So we're trying to think of a way to like kind of create a community of people who thought this way and were willing to, and had the like agency to actually contribute and do something about it. It's like, okay, so the algorithms are working against you, definitely. We know that. I don't know about like Discord or like some of these kind of more niche environments where I do think a lot of people form like massive groups there. A lot of these movements started on like 4chan or like they started on these like abstract places.
Bro, I think that Nepalese
Yeah.
revolution was like one big Discord server.
There's certain channels that it might be doable. It's just the matter of getting the majority on those channels when they're already basically defaulted to the first mover, which is like the Facebooks and them.
Do you still go on Facebook?
No, I haven't been on Facebook. I mean, I do go on Instagram is like my main thing I use, and that is also owned by Facebook. So they're still getting me, but not through that original one.
I haven't been on Facebook in years, realistically. I uninstalled Instagram years back, and I'll go on there like once a month, maybe, just like see if any of my friends posted, but like none of my friends ever post. So it's like a 30 to 40 second scroll. Like, all right, like that's all done. TikTok is my big one that I'm on, and I'm still on X, Twitter, somewhat decent amount, but like I don't know, dude. X is kind of a fucking cesspool now. Like I swear to God, dude. Like it is bad.
I'll like go on sometimes when I'm not in the middle of something, and I'm like, all right, let's actually go on and maybe debate with some people, maybe and I'll do that for like I'll throw a couple tweets out there, whatever, and it's like after doing that like a few times or for like a couple days, it's like, all right, I got to delete the app now because this sucks. Like this is terrible. You're not dealing with. I feel like you're dealing with so much. It's got to be like bots. It's either bots or
I think
trolls,
it is
dude.
all bots, dude.
I mean, there's all you ever see on there is. I mean, maybe it's my algorithm, but all I ever see is just like absolute rage bait and just some of the dumbest shit ever.
It's all inflammatory. Like no one has like a real opinion. It's just all like nth degree turned up to the absolute maximum.
I mean, I basically treat Instagram pretty much like TikTok, where I'm mostly just like watching reels. Like I very rarely see anyone I know actually posting anything. But that's kind of another one of those like network effect modes. Whereas I didn't get TikTok like when it first came out, and like just because I wasn't in the loop on it. And then by the time I kind of knew what it was, Instagram had already kind of copied them and had the same format. And then when I tried to get on TikTok, well, Instagram already had a better algorithm tailored to me. And so I would go on TikTok, but it couldn't addict me because it didn't know me yet. And Instagram kind of already had me addicted. And so I just never left. So it's another one is like, they just get you hooked in with the algorithms, even where it's like they just know exactly what they need to do to make sure you keep coming back. And they have like so much more information about you than you have about you. So good luck beating them.
Yeah. I think you want to wrap it up there?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there.
Sounds good. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
All right.
Catch us next time.
Yep.